If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is episode 188, and I'm going to turn the explicit tag on folks tonight because I have two people that don't know how to curve their language on a podcast, especially one of the gentlemen. And I thought I'd open it up. We've been drinking, been a little bit of time. I've apologized again for last week. Given the nature of my work and Hannah's absence, I just was not able to pull an episode together last week because of the fact that I was in Wisconsin for 5 bloody days. So
what you're saying is that this is the episode equivalent of a building that doesn't have a 13th floor?
To some extent, yeah.
Good.
Anyway,
Good.
Tonight I have joining with me, and I guess before I tell you who I've joined you with, I kind of want to make a little bit of an announcement, and this is kind of open to the public. You know, what we wanted to do, Hannah and I talked a little bit, and as he's transitioning and moving to Ohio, he's officially been relocated. He's in his new house. He starts his new job here in a week. The difference, though, is we talked about what would happen to the podcast if we open it up to more hosts or more opinions. Would we be able to drive a little bit less leftist-centered content than what we're doing? And we thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and open this up. So, you know, you've kind of gotten a taste of this for the last, 2 months because Boyce has joined us almost every week to help fill in. Though Boyce is pretty similar belief-wise to us. But what we did is we thought we would open up to some other perspectives, bring a few more voices onto the show. So I would like to introduce the gentleman from Not Another Atheist Podcast, or used to be from Not Another Atheist Podcast, Keith Spellman. and no relation to Sabrina or any of the other shit. But we thought
got letters in my name.
We did. I'm sorry. I'm not good with people's names. But I thought we'd bring Keith on because Keith has a Canadian viewpoint, and he has some good observations about American politics, given that he gets to live in an ivory tower in the North, where they celebrate LGBT rights, legalized weed, and they don't have a individual named Trump running their country. Welcome to the show, Keith.
No, we don't have Trump, but we've got Kenny. We've got Kenny, we've got Ford, and we could have Scheer in the next month or two. So I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm just going to change all of my handles to the Angry Canadian now because it's about time y'all motherfuckers realize that we're not perfect. We're fucked up too.
But just not as bad. I mean, you guys have universal health care. You guys support LGBT rights. I mean, for Christ's sake, look at Justin. He likes to go dancing in pride festivals.
Yeah, we try not to think about that because he's white and he shows it when he dances.
Anyway, so
come on, white people, leave the dancing to the people who know how to dance.
Fair enough. So we wanted to introduce Keith to the show as he's going to become a regular during the months as he provides his Canadian input, as well as a segment to the show where we get to kind of talk a little bit about Canadia's. Am I allowed to say Canadia's? I don't know. Is that that wrong?
Fuck it. Go. You know what?
Canadia's belief sets,
set.
their history, and kind of, some of the politics and how it actually can pertain to America. We also tonight have Boyce from the Mindful Skeptics podcast, who's doing amazing things and who puts out, I don't know, you put out like 7 mini shows a week, I swear to God. Boyce,
One a day.
I'm looking at Buddy's YouTube channel.
Yeah, I have one a day. At least one.
At least one. So he has 7 mini shows every single week, as well as his regular show. And Boyce will continue to support us as a voice, for the next, at least for the next year, as, we continue to collaborate between the two podcasts.
Absolutely. I love it. This is good for me because I don't have to do any post-production. So it's like I just show up and talk, which is my favorite thing to do.
Fair enough.
Hard about guesting on other podcasts.
Editing sucks.
I will agree with you on that. That's part of the reason why sometimes it takes forever to get a show out, because it's like you got to go back, you got to edit out. And if it's me, sometimes you edit out the swear words, sometimes you don't. Other times you got to edit out the size, the nails on the chalkboard, the farts. Sometimes my dogs. You never know.
My attempts at creating an ASMR Pornhub channel that I can monetize the fuck out of, because I'm pretty sure that's probably easier to make money on than YouTube.
Damn right it is.
Fair enough. But anyway, for the show tonight, obviously Boyce and I have done 2 episodes already where we've talked about the Democratic debate. We just couldn't pass this up tonight. So tonight we're going to do a couple of different things. We're going to talk about the Democratic debates. Keith has a segment on Canada that he wants to present to us.
Great land of Canada.
The great land of Canada. And hopefully by the time we get to his segment, he's not too drunk to pronounce the Canadian words that he likes to spiel. But
hey, wait, I'd like to talk to you about that for a sec.
There you go. But really, we couldn't pass up the opportunity to have a conversation about the Democratic debates. And the only reason I say this, and I only say this because we've done so many episodes on it, and I feel so bad because sometimes I feel like we're over-reporting on things. But in reality, the big idea here, folks, is the fact that if we don't have this conversation, where are we going to be, right? And the idea here is that with the Democratic debates coming up, we've been told we're no longer getting, I don't know, what was it, 22 options?
Oh, yeah.
I think originally it was 22 options. Now we're told you get 12 options. 12 options. And while I understand
how Thunderdome works?
It's exactly how Thunderdome works, but it shouldn't be how politics work in the United States. And I understand why they got to cut it down. I get it. And there was an NPR article from 8/29 that talks about how, they're making the cut down to Joe Biden, Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, Julian Castro, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar,
Klobuchar.
There you go. Beto O'Rourke, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Andrew Yang. And I understand why we got to take things down. And I'm kind of happy because who did we see disappear? We saw the crazy lady disappear. And I don't want to say this because I don't think...
Wait. Sorry, I know I'm totally cutting you off in your own show. Are you talking about Marianne Williamson, who thought that the power of thought could deter a fucking hurricane?
Yes.
Is that who you're talking about?
Yep, because I equate her to the Trump, to some extent, the Trump of the Democratic Party. Like, I mean, I was a little ecstatic that she got in there because it was entertainment. But then at the exact same time, I started to fear because, like if you look at what Trump did and how he isolated certain types of voters, there's a lot of Democratic voters that believe in crystals and shamrocks and thoughts and prayers. And I was a little concerned that she would get enough of a bump to actually be in this recent debate.
Well, it just based off of what you said and what I've seen from this woman's Twitter feed, because she is out there. Just looking at the NPR article you shared, because that's, important. They had the 2 categories of qualified for debate and then failed to qualify. Under the failed to qualify, they have 3 that apparently only met the donor requirement. So instead of I don't know exactly what that means, but Marianne Williamson was one of those who could only meet the donor requirement. So I'm guessing that means that they knew she was not exactly all there.
No, that's not what it means.
The donor requirement's 130,000 individual donors from more than 20 states. And then the other requirement was to be above 2% on 4 qualified national polls. So she clearly had less than 1%. She only had 1, I think.
Tanner, can you add the more you know sound to that? Because I just learned something.
The more you know. That's a good one.
Like I said, I do content on this shit every day. So
shit. I think I'm going to have to watch your YouTube channel while I'm at work.
There you go. And the idea here is, right, the idea here is that, you're right. Like, she had the donors, she had the money, she had the backing, but she's not hitting the polls. And that's, to some extent, I think that's a good thing, because if they cannot achieve the viewership that's required, there's no way they're going to get the votes. Like Tulsi Gabbard was the same way. And, personally, I hated her. I did not like her politics. I don't like her background, nothing that she brought to the table. But the difference is that because she couldn't hit the polls, she's not going to make it. And the nice thing is when we look back on this, if the Republican Party did the same thing for Trump, would he have even been in some of these other debates? I don't know.
No.
Has anybody done any research on that?
That's a good question.
Yeah. And so I think next week when we come back and meet together, the idea is we got to have that conversation, right? Because if the Republicans did the same thing and they put that together, would we be in the same position we are today? And if the answer is no, they did not do that, then the Democratic Party actually got something right for once, other than trying to, proposition a neocon to run for president. So,
may I interject on that?
Absolutely.
I think that's just very signifying of the lack of what's the fucking word I'm looking for? Integrity that the GOP has, is the fact that they allowed somebody who really, he only had the support of a very loud and obnoxious group of drunken idiots at first, which, social psychology will tell you that that's really all he needed, because then they were somehow able to recruit others and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I think that's, as much as I don't want to make it sound like I'm giving it credit, I think that was kind of the brilliance of the GOP in allowing Trump to kind of be the front runner, is because he at least was able to draw in a crowd. It may not have been a good crowd. It may not have been a crowd that you want supporting you, because they're full of degenerates and shitty human beings. However, it was still able to get people out of their seats. It was still able to get people there, which I think embodies a lot of the GOP capitalist ideology, which is basically, as long as it sells, it works. Who gives a fuck about any other part of the integrity or any sort of honesty involved, when really all that matters is selling and making the buck.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think the GOP is that disingenuous that that's a big thing, right? I do think that happens. I just don't know if I would claim that's the big end all be all. That's what they hang their hat on. I think the difference is that I don't honestly think they thought about it. I don't think that they put any thought into it. I literally think that they cast their net and said, hey, anybody can come. The difference is, if you make an ass of yourself, you're just going to bring ratings up. For Christ's sake, look at, what's the gentleman from Texas? What's his name?
Beto O'Rourke?
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke, right? He's got millions of dollars of backing from his wife's side of the family, but he doesn't really have any new ideas. He's a centrist at best. He's not very good public speaker, but yet he's able to get in because of the fact that he's able to pay enough money to get in. Then you look at Ted Cruz, right? Ted Cruz is in a similar situation. He has a lot of money. There's a lot of money being funneled into here that he has, but he doesn't have the charisma to actually take it, any step farther than the debate. And I'll use that as an example because, like my father, for example, bless his soul if he listens to this ever, but my father, has, like, he supported Ted across the board, right? Now, it's probably more of a religious motivation, plus the fact that Ted's a little bit more libertarian than a lot of the other GOP are. And the difference is, my father was all supportive of Ted until he basically shit the bed. He shits the bed, and my dad
at the teat of Trump.
Yep, exactly. He jumps right to the Trump vote. Even though my father was never on board with Trump ever in his life. Never. But he had to because it's a political party affiliation, right? And the difference is at least to some extent, even though the Democratic Party, and I'm not going to agree that they pushed Bernie out last time, but I will agree that there is some extremely suspicious activity that demonstrates that Bernie had a very hard time of ever securing the ability to run as a president. And while I don't think that's what failed us personally, I do think that was a slap in the face to those of us who have not wanted to be Democratic voters, but have had to settle for it because the more progressive side just doesn't bring the votes. It just doesn't, and to some extent, like if Yang runs as an independent, if he actually does this, and in a second, Boyce, you could tell us if he's even made mention of this, because I don't know if he has or not. But if Yang actually ran as an independent against Biden, you know how hard that's going to be for me to want to vote for Biden because Yang hits, 70% of the markers for me as a candidate. He just does.
Yeah. Yang has actually came out that he's been asked that if you don't win, are you going to run as an independent? He said, I will do nothing to help Donald Trump become elected, which is a no.
Wow.
He's all in. He's like, I just want Trump out no matter what. He's even said before that even if I don't win the candidacy, I just want to see my policies live longer than me. Like he says, I hope other candidates pick up on them and run with it to absorb my voters, to keep them there, not have them jump ship back to Trump or not vote at all, which is a vote for Trump.
Yeah. No, and
he just wants that fucker out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with him. And, to some extent, he's younger. He has more opportunities to run. It's not like he's going to go away. If he can make his mark now, what's to say in 4 or 8 years he can't make his mark again? I don't know. I think, and again, we can move on in a second, but, for me, the big thing here is one of the senators that dropped out was Kristin Gillibrand, right? And I know, Boyce, you're very Yang friendly. Like that's your boy, right? But for me,
yes.
Yeah, for me, Kristin was bigger than Andrew Yang. Like I liked a lot of his policies. I understand his logic. I don't disagree with him. I wouldn't be opposed to voting for him. But my bigger problem was with a few of his stances and some of his background. Whereas Kristin Gillibrand, came in and she hit a lot of those different points without having too awful of a path. And here she is pushed out by the DNC to some extent because she failed to get enough money. She failed to get in the polls. She just did. Whereas I think she's better than Harris. Like, I don't understand how Harris gets in over her, other than it seems like money talks.
All right. So she is definitely from the most popular state in the country that has the most loyal Democratic base to go from. So she has significant name recognition from being the attorney general, and then she became a senator. And she got really famous for being a total asshole on the Senate floor. During the Kavanaugh hearings, she really was really aggressive. So it really got her a lot of nationwide coverage. And plus the money's there in California. So she's met all the markers right away.
Yeah. And I just, the sad thing is, while on the nice side, the DNC was ousting some of these people that we, like Marianne Williamson, that we don't want inside of the debate. It's sad to see somebody like Gillibrand be able to drop out. Now, to some extent, though, I guess let's accept the reality. If she's not going to get the votes, then to some extent she's got to go, right? Because I'm all about dumping Trump, period. No questions asked. Get rid of him. Oust him.
Replace him with a sack of potatoes. At least we have 4 years of not Trump.
Yes. And the problem becomes, if this is the best way to remove people from the election circuit, I guess so be it. I'm sad to see her go. I think she's a better candidate than Harris is, given Harris's background, And it's sad because, like, boys, what are you saying, right? You're telling me that essentially because California is the largest state, she's got good backing, good financial aspects. The difference is, though, is why the fuck is California backing her of all people? She's imprisoning potheads, essentially, and then, like, saying, oh, it's not a big deal. She's not. California sometimes just seems to be so full of themselves, it's not even funny.
Yeah, there's a little bit of loyalty there because she is a shitty Democratic candidate, let's be honest. And all she's going to be is the lawyer-in-chief instead of the commander-in-chief. She'll just litigate everything because her answer is sue him for everything. It's lazy.
It is. And like I said, I mean, I don't know. For me, the biggest downfall here was Gillibrand having to drop out. And I guess it is what it is. We're here now. We can move forward. But, really the biggest prospect is, what did we lose from that? Now, I think we should transition into the actual debate, right? There's some debates that have happened, and I think we should transition to a discussion about what happened. Now, if you did not see the actual debates, I have posted in our links section an actual transcript from the Washington Post of the whole evening.
Ugh.
So you can read it if you don't want to watch it.
That's what that link was.
Yes.
Holy shit.
That's brutal.
It is.
Damn, that's a lot of reading.
I'd like to see what Joe Biden actually said, because he made zero fucking sense. Talk about a record player and shit,
He did. And that was a funny thing. I didn't post this, but I watched a postscript of all the stupid things the candidates say. And boys, I'm going to lace you up a little bit here, because one of the things Andrew Yang said is he brought Asian doctors into that. And I almost just shit myself when I was like, you got to be kidding me. How in God's green earth, how does he not understand the environment, where he's at? How does he not understand that it doesn't matter if you're Asian? You don't get to reference that and then, say, well, Asian people back me, therefore. It's like, come on, man. That's not cool. You could just say doctors.
Yeah, he got a little too cute with that try to be a little bit too funny in the moment, and it kind of fell flat. And he's like, I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. Ha, ha, ha. And
I just found that quote. I found that quote. If you guys want me to read it and actually contribute something worthwhile to the conversation other than a drunken commentary.
There you go.
Yeah. He actually said, now I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors.
Exactly. Isn't that
come
awful?
on, dude. Okay, I understand that that's the stereotype, but come on, man. That's the stereotype. We can't even try to play this off like he's saying, I'm Asian, therefore I'm more concerned about my health and am more inclined to talk to my doctor because I'm white and I'm a skeptic who's more inclined to talk to his doctor because I'm aware that they're smarter than I am. Like, why?
Yeah. I also posted a link from NPR, essentially, again, because I like NPR. And, I posted another link where they talk about, kind of dissecting, like, fact check, essentially, for what was said. And I think, Boyce, you and I talked about this each time. There was a poll during the show where essentially it equated and understood how many minutes somebody talked, right?
Yeah.
One of the things, Biden somehow is continuing to get more airtime than everybody else. Hands down.
It's because of the rules of the debate. So they'll ask him a question, and it's a 1 minute response, which is usually a minute 20 to a minute 30. And then they ask someone else to his left or right, what do you think about that? Or if you reference a different person, that person gets 30 seconds to reply. And so everyone's punching up at him. So he always gets a chance to reply to every insult or any policy questions about his policies. If they say your name, they got to give you 30 seconds to reply or rebuttal.
And didn't we talk about on the last episode that we had this conversation that people need to stop punching up at Biden, for Christ's sake? Mm-hmm. Stop it. Stop right now. Leave it alone.
Fall down. He's going to be his own demise. He's already doing it. Talking just madness, stupid shit.
Well, yeah. Go get your record players. I mean, I own a record player, folks. I do. Yeah. But I don't need you to tell me to go get it so I can listen to you on it. I mean, come on, man.
Well, it's like he's giving us parenting advice during a debate. What the hell's going on? We asked you about a policy about racism, and it turns into, you put your kids to bed with TV, or a record player, turn a record player on. I'm like, what the hell does that got to do with racism?
Yeah. I don't put my kids to bed with TV or a record player. You know what puts my kids to bed? If it's not their iPads.
Drugs.
It's not that.
Drugs, not hugs? No? That's not your parenting policy?
No.
Shit.
It's definitely hugs and kisses where they bitch about my, beard because they don't like kissing my cheek with a beard. But it's definitely, we put the kids, like tonight we played a board game and then they read because they didn't do their homework before they were supposed to. And they lied about it. And then all of a sudden, a half hour before bed, we figured this out. The wife and I were like, all right, if we want them to go to bed by 9, we got to ask them about the homework at 8:30 because we know they're just going to lie about it. So we might as well wait until the end of the night and ask them about it. And then they'll feel guilty. They'll do their homework right before bed and they get to go to bed. No, time. But, like we played a card game tonight called Phase 10, which I'm sure Canadians have never heard of. But
I love it.
You are accurate in the case of this Canadian.
I'm sorry. Anyway,
don't be sorry. It's true. It's fine.
You should play that game. We could do an online version of Phase 10. Go out to your local store, buy Phase 10. I bet Voice owns this. I own one. We can literally be playing Phase 10. Anyway, it's probably boring. Anyway, but maybe it's the Patreon's only thing. I don't know.
Yeah, let's bore the people who give you money every week. Yeah, that's a good way to encourage more people to donate.
Anyway, but the idea is Biden's whole stick about we put people to bed. Dude, shut up. And why don't you just tell us what you're going to do to change these things? Because that's all we care about. And, again, and I'm not a big Beto O'Rourke fan, but, what is he doing? He's taking his time where he was able to talk, which wasn't a lot. And he's sitting there saying, I'm going to ban assault rifles and do a buyback, right? That's important. What did Biden say? Tell me what Biden said that he's actually going to do to change society.
All he said was, I got Medicare for all, where if his pitch on Medicare for all, and I'm Obama's VP. Don't forget that. That's about all he's got.
Yeah. And who challenged him on that one?
Let me think. Well, the first debate was that one guy that said something about pass the torch. That was kind of funny.
Well, that was way back in the first one, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first one. That was kind of funny. But yeah, he got challenged a lot. That's why he got so much speaking time. He had 20 minutes or something, I think it was, compared to 7 and 8 for others. He's getting 2.5 more time talking. But he's a joke of a candidate. He has no real policies. He just says Medicare for all, which is a given in a Democratic primary right now. Every single one says that.
Yeah. And the difference is Biden is not a DACA supporter, no matter what he says. He claims he is. He's not. He's not voted that way. He's not represented himself that way. And I'm not going to even sit here and tell you that Obama was some big DACA supporter. Because I think he gave lip service to it, but I don't really think even Obama was putting things into, into society where he wanted to support DACA. He claimed he did. He put a small little law, but what did he do to follow up with it? What did he do to ensure that it was going to stay once he left? Nothing. And the difference is you could provide lip service, and when this is where I have a problem. When Biden says I'm like Obama, it feels like he's saying, hey, there's a token black guy that I can use. That's what it feels like to me. And I'm sorry, but I feel Biden is using this token black guy thing. And it's you know what? We aren't hearing that from many of the other candidates. Even Kamala Harris is for Christ's sake, do you know how you voted back in the 70s? Do you understand what you did for segregation of schools?
While I think it can be kind of tough bringing up the fact that was his voting record, 30 odd years ago. I think the fact that he's now trying to compare himself to the only black president, I think that's the political or the presidential candidacy equivalent of a white guy trying to justify his use of the N-word. I'm just saying.
Exactly.
Well, and something else too, Pete Buttigieg did call him out on that shit too. I did like that about Pete. Stepped up and said, you know what? No, Julian Castro, I'm sorry. He said, how come you can't have it both ways? We both worked for Obama's administration. When something good happens, you go, and you'll say, because Obama trusted me to do it, he had me do it. We did it together. But when it's a bad thing, you go, I was just a vice president. That was Obama's thing. So he really called him out on that shit, which spoke volumes to me, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's the thing. If you go through those bloopers, Castro, he's doing it like more than one time. It's not just like a one-time occurrence, Yeah. And another thing that I really liked is Harris had a conversation about black education, right? And that's one of the big things. We could talk about, equality for all. We could talk about all these other things. And, in fairness, we're three white guys having a conversation on podcasts, right? But Harris brought up the point that if you look at the history and you look at how things happen, if you do not have teachers of color, you are not going to achieve as many goals as you are with teachers of color. And NPR actually went out of their way and they actually found a statistic that basically said black students who have just one black teacher in elementary school are 13% more likely to enroll in college than their peers who didn't have any black teachers. Students who have two black teachers are 32% more likely to enroll in colleges. And like my father would tell me right now, my father would be like, well, there you go. See how it doesn't work when you have, affirmative action and all this garbage. And I'm going to sit there and say, hold the fuck on, for Christ's sake. All they're telling you is the fact that we need more diversity in schools. We need to stop this goddamn ridiculous little circle that we call a community if it doesn't include minorities. And if we are not actively seeking out to have an inclusive society, what the fuck are we doing? And Zealand, I live in Zealand, for Christ's sake. It is not that inclusive. In fairness, it's kind of weird because my daughter's friends with like one of the only black girls in her grade, and I'm not going to say, hey, good for her, blah, blah, blah. She likes the girl because the girl's nice. The girl likes to ride bikes with her. They go to the library together, all that other things. But the difference is that if you take a community that has the amount of money that Zealand has and you can segregate it upon itself, you can create a community that's elitist. And what Camilla is, what Harris is saying, she's saying, hey, hold on a second. Why the fuck do we have this? Are we going to change that? And while I disagree with a lot of things about her, in this aspect, she's right. She's saying, how do we create a more diverse society to allow for things to change? And that is what the fuck we need in the DNC right now, is not a bunch of white dudes, is not a bunch of fucking people that think they know what it is. It's somebody that's going to actually make a change to how society runs.
I think it's also important to note that it needs to not only be somebody who just represents the current status quo, but somebody who represents, the future. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for it should be the best person for the job, but I think you're absolutely right in how we need to focus on increasing and improving our diversity and giving those candidates a chance to rise up, to shine, to stand up and say, yo, fuck this shit. Let's get something new going. Let's get something let's improve things for our citizens. Let's keep it so American citizens aren't basically living in a third world country because of the color of their skin. People who are afraid of sirens behind them because of the color of their skin. I think it's important that, admittedly, I used to be one of those assholes who was like, well, it should just be the best people for the job, without fully comprehending the fact that there's more to it than that. There's more to it than just the best person for the job, especially when it comes to life and death situations. There has to be somebody who can be trusted to be more than just paying lip service to that. It has to be somebody who's more than just that, Uncle Joe that we missed in all those memes from as soon as Trump won, because really, I think Biden might be trying to coast on that. I mean, admittedly, this is really just more me being conspiracy theorist than anything, coasting on the reputation of being kooky Uncle Joe, who everybody was laughing about as soon as Obama, his time as president was up, Trump got voted in, and we're passing around all of these funny memes that were just like, oh, I miss Obama and Biden already. They were such cozy bros. And we're just associating Biden with Obama's legacy. I mean, Obama may not have been squeaky clean, but he was the first fucking black president, and that means something, doesn't it?
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. And if you look at it, one of the other things that comes up is, we talk about the 9/11 generation, right? Like we're all probably very close to the same age. He's probably, a young pup compared to us. But, I mean,
I'm way older.
You're not way older than us.
I'm 44, bro. I'm old enough to be his dad, probably. How old are you anyway?
You know what? You just made my night by assuming my dad is younger than 44. My dad is 56. I'm 30.
Yeah, so I could have been a naughty 14-year-old.
All right, you got a point on that one.
The shit goes down.
Anyway, the difference is, like, and this is something that's kind of funny because, my wife brought this up to me, like she texted me and she goes, what is up with everybody saying 9/12, right? Everybody's like excited about 9/12 because everybody came together. Everybody did all these things together. And I said, yeah, it's bullshit, right? You know why it's bullshit? It's because everybody came together to be racist. That's what the fuck happened. I'm sitting here going, I don't know about this. And, everybody I worked with is like, no, we got to put the flags up everywhere. We got to say, these terrorists bombed us. But what people mean when they say terrorists, they mean Muslims. They mean brown people. They mean people that wear saris. That's what the fuck these people mean. They don't understand that in the long run, there's more white terrorists than there fucking is anybody of a minority inside of the United States. And I guess I'm getting a little passionate here, but the 9/11 generation, it could affect us in the wrong way. Because if you don't fucking understand that 9/11 is nothing but a reciprocal attack of all the horrific shit America did to other countries, I mean, we're lucky Canada hasn't, killed us yet. I mean, I guess you're just beady-eyed, mouth flappy people that, want to give us maple syrup and all.
Hey, fuck you, buddy.
Exactly.
I
See?
mean, hey, 200 years ago, we burned down the fucking White House.
There you go. See?
I'm not going to lie. If I were in more eastern parts of the country, I would... I don't know if I should admit this on air, but I'd be considering trying it again.
Exactly.
And now I have a drone sitting outside my window.
Yeah, see, well, no, you don't, because Trump's not that rich. But the idea here is we have this 9/11 generation, and if we don't understand what we're looking at and where we're at, and Pete Booty basically, try to leverage this whole thing, and it takes to understand that, hey, if we don't answer this question, how will this shape American politics in the future? We're not going to get anywhere. And I'm saying is, if you are outraged by what happened on 9/11, you should be more outraged with the government's response, and you should never, never want somebody in office that even thought that same way. And I'm gonna call Hillary Clinton out on that whole thing too, because she was the same way. She was very centrist. She was all pro this. Let's go bomb a bunch of people. Obama wanted to bomb a bunch of people. It's the same thing. Like, if you look at Biden, he fits into that scenario. And I'm saying, fuck Biden. Let's move on. He's done. You can call him your uncle and move on. He's a silly uncle he's like Pennywise. He's in the corner, like waiting to eat us. That's all he is. And I'm saying is, we have Elizabeth Warren, we have Andrew Yang, even Kamala Harris. We have those three people that are right here, right now, ready to help us not become the next generation that basically is reactionary to fear. The Democratic Party cannot rely on fear the same way that the Trump Party relied on fear to win the election. And if we do, we are no better than them.
Well, don't leave out Bernie in that either, though, because Bernie's I think he missed his moment, but policy-wise, he's up there. And name recognition-wise.
You're right. And I'll be honest, I move past Bernie sometimes, because I think that's the easy answer, right? Mm-hmm. I think all of us can just admit that Bernie is to some extent the easy answer. And I won't lie and tell you that Bernie, beforehand, and I had these conversations, does Bernie have charisma? Does Bernie not? Bernie has charisma. It just may not be in the way people want to see it. And
he's got great charisma. I like his charisma, man.
and Bernie's not afraid to tell it all. And here's this. We talked before, boys. You know, like I actually went back and finished the Joe Rogan podcast with Bernie on it. I did.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was trying to remember the English language on that one. Bernie was on Rogan?
He was.
last week. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't last week. It was like a
was
month
it?
ago. Yeah, it was. Unless he came up and had a new one. It was like over a month ago.
The only episode of Joe Rogan that I ever actually pay attention to.
Yeah. I've only listened to 2 episodes of Joe Rogan that like I enjoyed. One was with Maynard James Keenan from Tool, and the other one was, with Bernie on it. And, it's kind of weird because Joe Rogan plays the antagonist a little bit with Bernie. And I'll be honest, I don't think Bernie answered as good as he could on a lot of questions. But Bernie came at him. And, like the one big thing that everybody has a question with Bernie on is, what are you going to do to support Medicare for all? What are you going to do to give universal health care? How are you going to pay for free health care? And Bernie literally explains how it's not free health care. And in fairness, Andrew Yang has jumped on the same wagon. Now, I'm not going to say Andrew Yang is stealing from Bernie, and I genuinely don't care if he is personally or not. To me, the difference is we need more candidates explaining the fact that it's not free health care, because Canada doesn't have free health care. They have health care for everybody, and it costs a shitload, and you pay for it. The difference is
it's taxes.
Yeah. And how many wars has Canada been in, Keith, in the last 10 years?
I mean, to be fair, Canada, for a while there, it was kind of like the little brother of the United States. So whenever the U.S. went to war, Canada had kind of followed. I know we never went to I hope I'm remembering right. I don't believe we ever went to Iraq. Now, I do know for sure, because I had a friend who was deployed there, that we were in Afghanistan. But I know we pulled out a lot quicker than you guys did, but also we don't really have the military force.
Yeah. And the difference is, that's the huge difference here in our discussions, and it's kind of funny because, we have a Canadian on, right? And we can ask him these questions, but that's the idea is that they're not having the same issues that America has. And when we talk about being a world power, and we talk about all these things, America is sacrificing lives internally for being a world power. And there's very few other countries that do the same thing. Nobody does it as good as we do. But there's a few countries that do the same thing.
You guys are really working on beating the British when it comes to colonialism, aren't you? I mean, they've got a few centuries, maybe a millennia.
Yeah, they had a head start, but
yeah, they've got a big head start. But I think you guys have really cornered the market on that.
Well, and we've become just an international bully now.
Exactly.
Well, look at your president. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He's just become a bully of, I don't like this, so fuck you. I don't like that, so fuck you. I'll fuck your wife if you don't like it. Kind of.
I'm just gonna grab her by the vagina.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my inner Canadian. Even when I quote people, I make it polite.
I do love the meme of Justin Trudeau standing by Melania, and she's just looking at him, just dead in the face.
She's giving him those fuck me eyes that she has not even once gotten close to giving 1% of that to Trump. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason he's been inside her is because.
Oh,
all right.
Is because it gave her the baby that basically made it so she wasn't technically illegal.
It's a contractual obligation, I think.
Is it? No, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole because I will never come back from it.
Gross.
Moving on. So
that's a good idea. Thanks, Chris.
Moving on. So, we go back. Let's go back to these debates, and I kind of want to gauge. Like Keith, if you haven't seen them, that's fine. I don't expect a Canadian to actually watch American garbage.
Oh, thank fuck.
But Boyce, what was your feeling coming out of these debates?
My feeling was it just became this shit show for the first hour and a half. It's just arguing about Medicare for all, whose plan cost the most, and who had the best payment options, I guess you call it, with taxes, who would be covered and who would. Just it was really reckless at the beginning. They just kind of let them just yell across the room at each other. It was very unproductive for the first hour and a half of that 3-hour debacle. But it really just became an insult fest to punch up at Joe, punch up at Bernie, and a little bit of punch up to Elizabeth Warren as well. But the moderators were very aggressive with their questions, accusation-wise. They really came after everyone they asked a question. They asked a very challenging question, which I appreciated a little bit.
Well, it's important. You got to hold these candidates to task. I mean, you got to make sure that you're holding their feet to the fire. Otherwise, they're just going to be able to get by with fluffing their way through answers. And really, where the fuck has that gotten us?
Right where we're at.
Yeah. It's gotten you the best president ever. He's just the best. He's the greatest. He's got all the best words. He knows how to tell everybody they're the best. He's got the best Twitter feed ever. Oh my God.
Laughter is my only medication when it comes to thinking about politics south of the border. To be honest, I want to build a fucking wall some days. I mean, I want to let a couple of you through because I like a few of you. Some of you guys are like really awesome. I would be like, come to Canada. We've got weed. But at the same time, I'm also like, you guys got to fix your shit.
Yeah. And I think, Keith, I think that's kind of like, if we want to talk about where we're at, right? And where the debates ended at. There was a discussion between Warren and Sanders, on filibuster votes, right? I'm sorry, but that's not interesting debate dialogue, right? It's just not. But at the same conversation, there probably should be a discussion about that. Harris was challenged on her criminal justice record, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And her effectiveness. And, she had to backtrack. She had to basically say, well, I don't know if I would agree with what I did in the past. And I think that goes a long way in fairness for her, because that's a big thing for her, right? She put a
sorry,
lot...
who was it that said that?
Kamala Harris.
Okay.
And, she essentially basically talked about some of her policies and how, she believes she could have been, more proactive in her development, right? And that she's going to change things as president. Now, we have to have a conversation internally to say, if she's willing to change, should we give her a chance, right? Now I could tell you I'll give her a chance if it's her versus Trump, but I'll also give Biden a chance to not be a creepy old guy if it's him versus Trump, only for the pure fact that everything is better than Trump, no matter where we are at.
Except Kim Jong-un.
All right, except Kim Jong-un, and he's not running for president. So,
although I'm gonna be honest, if Trump could write as nicely as Kim Jong-un could, do you think it was Un, or do you think it was like he paid a bunch? Sorry, by paid a bunch of people, I mean he held a bunch of guns to people's heads and was like, you have to write a nice letter, or you have to write this letter to convey this message, and the person who writes the letter that I select gets to live and everybody else gets shot.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds
right. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to go back to my liquor because I just nullified everything that I just said. So, as you were, gentlemen.
The other thing. Else, go ahead.
Yeah, something else I noticed too is you can kind of see who they were favoring somewhat with their questioning, the moderators, where they challenged Harris significantly on that. They challenged Andrew Yang very well, significantly with this private school versus public school charter question, and he had to backtrack on that a little bit and explain his position. And then other people had to do some of their backtracking. But then they go to ask fucking Cory Booker a question. They ask him about being a fucking vegan, about food. What kind of dumb... Even he laughed about it and said, no. Let me translate that to Spanish. No. And that rubbed people wrong. He did do that. But that's such a softball bullshit question. Do you think everyone should be a vegan? I mean, really?
No.
That's the stupidest question you can ask.
Yeah, the problem is, though, I understand where they're going with that, right? Their idea is not
carbon emissions.
Yes. And I agree with those, to be 100% honest with. And if it meant we all had to be vegan to save the planet, boom, sign me up. Move on. I don't care. As long as I can still drink my whiskey and be angry, I'm okay with it, right? because I don't want to die, and I don't want my kids to die, because we eat too much, meat. But I think the difference here, boys, is you're right. Is like, why are we not challenging some of these other representatives on some harder questions? Biden got 0 hard questions from the, team at all. Who gave him the hard questions? The people challenging him, which sucks because what did we just say a second ago? We should stop challenging Biden. But we're the only ones challenging him. Bernie, Warren, Yang, Harris, all these other people, they're going after Biden. Even Buttigieg is going after Biden. And for Christ's sake, it's not.
And Julian Castro, big time.
And Julian Castro, exactly. He doesn't have as funny of a name as Buttigieg, though. I just like saying Buttigieg. Like Buddha, 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 Buddha. It's like that song.
Booty butt chicks, booty butt chicks.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Would you guys say that they're given that Joe's being given time to Biden his time?
Oh, yes. But look, if you watch, he's falling in the polls. So
sober.
He's falling in the polls, and all I can say is it's funny because I have a lot of I'll call them conservative Democrats on my Facebook page, and even they're kind of distancing themselves from Biden now. And I told Boyce this earlier. I would sacrifice Bernie and Warren to the gods of Andrew Yang if it meant he was able to beat Trump. Even though I don't agree with Andrew Yang, and I think we should kind of come back to his proposal on schools and private schools, and I think we should talk about that because I think that's a fair conversation.
Well, let's go into that because all I know is from a lot of my the people on my Facebook feed who are Americans talking about Andrew Yang and the whole universal basic income thing, which I don't know enough about at this point to even make a drunken commentary about. But let's talk about what he said about schools and private schools. Like, I'm down for that shit. Yeah,
and I agree with you. But the difference here is that the problem is if people are distancing themselves from Biden, and if Andrew Yang is going to be the answer, right? Because he's that liberal conservative all wrapped into one, but not a racist and doesn't support war, it's going to be really hard to not want to go, vote for him as an individual. But let's go back to Boyce. Why don't you explain the private school? We'll call it dilemma gate from here.
Yeah, well, they're just referencing a quote of him, kind of off the cuff, talking about if you see a politician buddying up with the only supporting, I guess you say supporting getting rid of charter schools and trying to force people back into public schools, he was saying it sounds like a politician's in bed with the teachers union politically, which makes sense as a Democrat because it's considered the pro-union party. But he was saying, he corrected him and says, hey, I'm pro-good school, but he doesn't think it's cost-effective to invest in schools that are failing, which I don't necessarily agree with that either because, I don't agree with that necessarily either because I know some schools around here that are struggling because it has poor structure and poor support. But he's just, that's the thing. He said, I'm pro-good school. If it's a good school, keep it open. If it's a bad school, shut it down. But I think that needs a whole lot more nuance to come into it. Talk about the systematic defunding of a public school in a shitty neighborhood.
But do you think that he's been put in a position where he has to give an opinion on something that maybe he hasn't A, thought all the way out, and B, in reality, he's actually not going to spend any sort of effort, entertaining if he became president?
Absolutely. I think this is just their way of trying to inject a little more, doubt to create some anti-Yang people by saying, then it's going to get all the teachers unions to say, fuck Yang, even though he wants to give them a raise of $1,000 a month. They're just trying to give him a seed because they don't like him because he's not a corporate. He's not a corporate Democrat. And so I think that's just their way of throwing some shade his way and to create a little more division in the party, honestly. Yeah. Corporate versus progressives. I find him to be a progressive candidate.
Yeah. And I would agree with you. I actually think he's very progressive compared to a lot of the other candidates in the running. And you know, I mean, I guess, and it kind of goes back to that anarchist / libertarian viewpoint, right? You know, like Andrew Yang is very far left to some extent, but at the exact same time, he's a libertarian. And the difference is if he could shed a little bit of, and I don't know, maybe in my opinion, he should shed a little bit of libertarian viewpoints, and he'd be an easy progressive candidate to vote for. The difference is, though, is if he sheds that, he's going to lose some votes. And it's kind of funny because there is people on my Facebook page who no longer have any interest in Bernie or Warren at all. They can't stand them. They don't want them, but they're all for Andrew Yang. And I want to say, if you compare the two, they're 80% similar. You know, like they just are.
Yeah.
And do we honestly think the 20% that Yang is preaching is going to be something that's going to take hold inside of society? I mean, honestly, do you honestly think that this 20% difference is something he's going to waste his time trying to enact into law? I don't think so.
No, let's be realistic. Most presidents in their first term get 1 or 2 policies pushed through. It takes them a whole fucking 4 years. So for him, it's Medicare for all and UBI. Simple. That's his 2 main focuses. And he'll have no resistance whatsoever from the Democratic Party for Medicare for all. And the UBI, I think if he's elected president, everyone knows why. It's for the freedom dividend and Medicare for all. All these other policies are just ideas he's got. His climate change, his climate plan is significant. He takes the Green New Deal and expands on it with a very detailed timetable, I guess you'd say. So those are his biggest policies. I think he's going to go moving forward. All these other things about the fucking schools and shit are just afterthoughts. It's like he's never going to get down that list that far to get to it. So it's not high enough on the list. You know, so I don't know what else they expect from him. He's going to have to focus on what he knows, and that's UBI, Medicare for all, and climate change has got to be a forefront for him too. I think since Jay Inslee dropped out, that he will have to become the climate change advocate, hopefully.
Yeah, and if he doesn't, in my opinion, if he does not take up that climate change thing, he's gone. There's no way he's going to last.
Well, he actually had a separate, I guess you'd say, a press conference for his climate change plan, where he laid out, like, I think it was a 30-page scientific document, pretty much is going to be his plans. It's like a scientific notations and everything. So he's very, very detail-oriented, very transparent with his policies. But the thing is, when he makes that policy for climate change, it's got annotations like a scientific paper. I got this statistic from reference 2, this one from 3. And so I think he should take that mantle from Jay Inslee and say, okay, I'm the climate change advocate because here's my plan, 33 pages of it.
Wait, so you mean a very scientific conversation is being informed by science?
Yes, absolutely.
Why is that happening? That's just crazy talk.
Yeah, isn't that backwards?
Because that seems very antithetical to a politician.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. He's not. That's the thing. He always says, and that's coming from a politician, and I'm barely a politician. They kind of laugh about it. But yeah, he actually cites the people that he talked to that actually helped inform this decision too. He cites the people that he's talked to, which is transparent. So that's his best chance. Stick with UBI and Medicare for all. Become the media sweetheart for climate change. That's his bread and butter. Plus, he's drawing Trump supporters, ex-Bernie bros. Biden's going to die eventually on this campaign trail. And I think he's got a good shot because he's always trending up. But, you know, Elizabeth Warren has a lot of policies too. Bernie's just Bernie. I think he's freaking hilarious, man. Did you guys see that video of him shaking people's hands? There's a black guy that he goes, just this little quick handshake with him, daps him up, then moves back to a normal white guy handshake the rest of the line. I thought it was pretty fucking funny.
Bernie did that?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's impressive for a guy his age to have that kind of dexterity. I'm impressed. That's why we need to support healthcare for all. Like, really. It's just so that once all us white folks get to our 80s, is we can still be somewhat relevant to the young people.
Yeah, dab them up.
All right, so
I will not embarrass every white person by dabbing on this podcast. I won't
do
it.
I
have a line. It's a hard line.
And don't dab unless it's a real dab. And I don't
That's
have
it.
any, so I can't share. So, all right. So, last thoughts. I think we spent a good almost hour having a conversation, and I want to make sure we give Keith enough time for his Canadian update. But last thoughts on the debate and where we're at. Boyce, you go first.
Well, I think that this last debate really shined a light on who's desperately hanging on, which means Beto, Julian, and Amy Klobuchar are on their way out. Julian might still be able to hang on because he did come after Joe Biden pretty hard. And Texas is a big goddamn state. And I think Beto O'Rourke lost his ass talking about, hell yeah, we're coming from your AR-15s and their AK-47s. I think he's done. So I think we're going to narrow it down to 8 here pretty quick. And October, they're coming to Ohio, and I'm going.
Keith, your thoughts as the outsider of the country?
Holy shit! Really? You're gonna throw me on that one? Don't get me wrong. A lot of what I know is very influenced by the Americans that I have on my Facebook feed, which does tend to be a lot of people from our atheist and skeptic community, because as soon as I did the whole podcast thing, they were all like, oh, we're on your friends list now. I'm trying to be an optimist. I really am. Because I think Trump is a danger to the world. I wish he were only a danger to himself and his life, but as the last almost 3 years have proved, he's not. Can y'all just agree to vote him out and then infight after? Can we set the goal as getting rid of Trump and then focus on the infighting? Because that is very much a hot button thing of mine. It seems now that we don't have to deal with as much of the Bernie bros who will just vote for the other guy out of spite. Admittedly, I haven't really heard about any third-party candidates, which really kind of inspires me, because I think had Jill Stein not run in 2016, that may not have had as much of an impact. I mean, I don't know if it would have gone the other way, but I think that would have had less of an impact. As far as the debate goes, I guess I'll know more when it's just down to, what is it, 2, 3, 4 candidates, because then at least maybe they'll have more of a chance, as opposed to just the favorite candidate getting more of a chance, or the biggest name candidate getting more of a chance, simply because the rules of combat in this little arena dictate that every time they're mentioned, they get an extra 30 seconds to justify and defend their point, which, don't get me wrong, I know that the truth can't even tie its shoes before a lie makes it all the way around the globe. As a skeptic, I know how easy it is to spread misinformation, and we need to make sure that credit given where credit's due, and we need to give somebody a chance to, refute 9 attacks against them that were made in 30 seconds, and they have a minute to refute 9 points. And I think that we need to find a better way to balance that. I'm just talking a whole lot of out of my ass, because I'm not a very good politician. But honestly, from the sounds of things, Andrew Yang seems to be one of the bigger names coming out between him and Bernie. I mean, I still like Bernie, but I've heard more from Bernie. I guess I need to really dive back in before I waste more people's time.
Yeah. And on my side, I think the debate comes down to, for me, it's Bernie and a Warren ticket. It's Sanders and Warren ticket. And no offense, Boyce, I think Andrew has a lot of positive things to say. I think that I could support him if he gets in bed with either of them. And I'd be honest, if it's a Warren Yang ticket, that has me as well. I'm for both of those. But the problem I have is that Yang doesn't have the name recognition. He doesn't have the experience. And while we could sit here and debate whether that matters or not, I think to some extent it does. A little bit.
Definitely does.
And Warren and Bernie both have, Warren and Sanders both have that experience that they don't. And I think Trump has demonstrated to us that the lack of experience makes for shitty politics and poor decisions. And I'm not going to say Yang would ever be that person, ever. Never would say that in my whole life. But I will say that there is some credit to those that have spent their time working the game and have been the opposition to a lot of mainstream Democratic decisions out there.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, I mean, Bernie's been fighting a good fight for 35, 40 years, and Elizabeth Warren's been doing it for a while. Not as long as Bernie, nobody has. But she's a former teacher. She knows what it's like to actually punch a clock. Like, that's the only downside for Bernie for me is he's been a career politician, which is kind of a turnoff for me. But the difference in Bernie is he's not in bed with anybody corporate. He's the antithesis of that. He's anti-corporate, and that's why I like him as a candidate.
Exactly. Well, I think we've exhausted that topic. So, Keith,
Woo-hoo.
as we come close to the end of the show,
Yeah.
you get your Canadian dish on American people segment. So tell us tonight, what do you have in store for us?
Okay, so I know you said it's an update, but this is not a fucking update because basically my topic takes place no more recently than 120, almost 130 years ago. So this is not a fucking update. Thanks for that. So it's time to go a little more into what Canada really is. So we're going to spend a little bit of more time this go around on actual facts, unless I'm ranting about political bed shitting going on. Because I know last time I kind of went a little off the rails. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Canada is in terms of what happened at Confederation and what did that mean? What happened on July 1st, 1867? So, but I put on your thinking, Duke, and let's get going. Chris,
Right,
I don't know.
I think the first thing you got to do is explain what Confederation means, because when Boyce and I hear Confederation, we think rebel flag and how much we want to kill people and why we don't need Robert E. Lee statues and all those things.
Listen. Okay. I spent a little bit of time working on this, and I will sort of explain Confederation, but not really, because I had other things that I wrote down before I even got to Confederation, because there was actually debate and differences in what Confederation meant for Canada at the time and what Confederation actually means. And I realized I was not going to have time to go into all of that if I wanted to talk about anything in under 10 minutes. So I'm going to get going on this. Okay, good. Glad we had this chat. So, Canada is a constitutional monarchy. Now, this means that although the Queen holds partial and somewhat restricted governing power, she doesn't have authority. She does not run our country. But these days, she is more of a symbolic figure, and that's its own thing, and I couldn't tell you very much about the royal family, except how far off I'd like them to fuck. So, why are we no longer the bitch of the colonists in jolly old England? Well, there's more to it than a simple, we told them to go fuck themselves after a countrywide bar fight can sum up. So we're going to talk a little bit about Confederation. On July 1st, 1867, the three British colonies known as the Province of Canada, yeah, it was called the province instead of a fucking country, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick were formally united into the Dominion of Canada. This did not actually encompass all of what we know as Canada, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So at that time, what used to be called the Province of Canada ended up being split up into two different provinces, Ontario and Quebec. Now, those of you who recognize those names will know that Ontario is currently the largest and most popular province in the country. We're also the most influential in our elections. Just its own other rant and issue. I'm not going to go into that. Who's fault? And Quebec, which is our francophone province. Then there's Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, which make up the Maritimes, as may have referenced earlier. I don't know. I've been drinking for a while here, so So at that time, what used to be called Province of Canada was split up into Ontario and Quebec. And then Canada, at the time of Confederation in 1867, was a whopping 4 provinces. So many years, many bar fights later, Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories. And I'm sorry, boys, I wasn't told about you being here, so I have to improv a little bit of my script here. So this is pop quiz time. Mr. Tanner and Boyce, of the 2 of you, which can name more of the provinces and territories? Now remember, there are 13 of them, and the winner will get Smollett cookies, which is kind of like the Queen's relationship with the fucking country. So you won't get to eat them. I will. But anyways.
That's not fair. I want to eat them. Maybe the goal should be you send one of us a 5th of Canadian whiskey.
Do you know how fucking expensive that is? This is a goddamn joke. Listen, this is a podcast. And I'm gonna let Boyce go because he was less of a pain in the ass of this. So, Boyce, I want to see, how many of the 10 provinces and 3 territories of Canada can you name? And you get bonus points if after you name the province and or territory, and then you can name a capital.
Okay. Fuck the capitals. I'll get lucky if just so, I'm gonna be. I know it's Montreal, Quebec. That's a capital, right?
It is. So that shit. I guess I gotta write this down. Hang on.
Okay.
So that's let's see here.
Quebec.
That is Quebec, and
yep.
Montreal is the capital of Quebec.
Yep. And then we got Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
Has Toronto in it, I believe, right?
Ah, okay.
Is that 2?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. Manitoba.
All right. One sec. Hold on. I'm typing on my phone is a lot slower than typing on a computer, it seems. Okay. Manitoba, yep.
Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm.
New Brunswick.
Okay.
Nova Scotia.
Man was paying attention while I was talking. Great.
Newfoundland. Newfoundland. What the fuck?
Fuck all. Newfoundland. I don't know why it's pronounced that way, but it's Newfoundland.
It's spelled found. I know that.
Yep.
And there's one more to the left. The British. What the fuck? British Columbia.
I kind of want to write on my little score sheet, British, what the fuck? But nope, you're right, British Columbia.
So that's 8, right?
That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 of 13 so far.
No, I don't know the ones up north.
All right.
That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
You want to throw any?
Chris, honestly, that's everything for me. That's the best I can do.
All right. So you got 8 provinces and 2 capitals. All right. Let me figure out my scoring system for that after Chris goes. All right.
Oh,
Tanner.
no. That's BS. I call BS. You got to give them a score, and then I get my own score.
Listen, I have to improv this because you didn't tell me that there was going to be 3 on this call. I thought there was only going to be 2.
All right.
I arranged this for just you. So I
besides the ones I said, because you already got those.
Yeah.
All right.
So you got.
So I'm not super good with the city, so we'll see if I get any of them correct or not. So there's Ontario.
Yep.
And Toronto's got to be the capital. Has to.
Yep.
Quebec. And I'm guessing Quebec City.
I think that's actually the right one.
If it's not, it's Montreal. One of the 2. But I'm pretty sure it's Quebec City.
Okay.
Nova Scotia. And I think it's something like Hell or Halifax or Haliforks or something like that.
Halifax. That's one of them.
Okay.
Damn it.
New Brunswick. No idea what their capital is. I think it starts with an F, but I have no idea.
I want to say I think you're right.
It has something to do. It was in a movie. It was in a. God, what's the name of the guy from Jay and Silent Bob? Silent Bob's name. What's his name?
Kevin Smith.
It was in a Kevin Smith movie somewhere, but I have no idea. I'll be honest. I don't know what it is. It starts with an F though. Manitoba. And that's Winnipeg because that's a hockey team. That's how I know that.
Oh, shit, Bryce. He's coming for you.
Yeah.
British Columbia.
I forgot one. Shit. Go ahead.
And I don't know. I know the city starts with a V, but I don't know if it's Victoria or Vancouver. Because I want to say Vancouver because it's a hockey team, but I'm pretty sure that's not correct. But Vancouver is the one I know.
Okay.
The one you missed that I know for a fact you missed is Prince Edward Island. And I'll be honest, I'm only 90% sure that is. And the only reason I know that is because of Anna Avonlea. I'm sorry. Like, that's the only reason I know that is because fucking Anna Avonlea.
Fuck.
Is that correct? Am I correct?
Anne of Green Gables?
Anna Avonlea and Anna Green Gables. Anna Avonlea was a TV series. Anna Green Gables was the movie.
What is Avonlea? Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know that. Fuck.
I know.
No, I have one more that I did forget. Calgary.
That's the city I live in.
Oh, damn. What province is that in?
We'll get there.
Fuck all. Okay.
You don't want to give Tanner the point. Come on.
It's Alberta. It's in Alberta.
Oh, shit.
I know that. But Calgary is not the capital, though. It's Edmonton because of fucking Oilers, goddammit. And I hate the Oilers so much. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them.
I knew I liked you.
Yeah, I fucking hate the Oilers. I'm sorry.
I lost my composure there.
Saskatchewan, and I have no idea. I have no idea what the capital is. Saskatchewan. I don't know. It's a woman's name, I think, but I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with fun.
Jen? I don't know. I'm gonna miss that one, I guess.
I say it rhymes with fun, but that's really a quote from Deadpool.
Okay. Then I don't know. So there's Alberta with Edmonton, and then Newfoundland, and I'll be honest, I don't know the name of the capital of that. I think there's something like the Yukon Province. I think we missed that. I don't know if the Yukon Province is technically correct, but I think there's a Yukon Province. And then there's like one called the Northwest Territories, but I have no idea what that is. So I guess that's as much as I know. That's my Canada history for you. And mainly it's because of hockey. So hockey and fucking Anna Green Gables.
You know what?
Yeah,
honestly,
I didn't think about hockey.
Honestly, boys, if you followed hockey more, you probably would have done better. I mean, you did really well. Tanner was right. I forgot that there's a place called Quebec City, and that really pisses me off because that's one of my favorite bits of trivia that I know about hockey is that the very first team that the Calgary Flames played against was after they came to Calgary from the Quebec after they came from Atlanta. Was the very first team they played for was the Quebec Nordique, which played their home city was Quebec City, and that's the capital of Quebec. Not Montreal. I'm sorry. That's not knowing my own country. I am not smarter than a fifth grader, and my wife can prove it. She taught the fifth grade last year.
Yeah, Montreal's a fair guess, though. You know that, right? Like that's what everybody knows.
That's why I was like, yeah, that sounds right. So, boys, you were Quebec. Other than Montreal, you did really, really well. Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick. Capitals that I actually can't even remember. Let's see. So, Ontario, capital is Toronto. However, the federal capital, meaning the capital of Canada, is Ottawa. That's in Ontario. That's a fun little bit of trivia. That would have made major points had I thought to add that into the game. Manitoba, the capital of Manitoba is, you know what, fuck it. I wrote this down east to west, coast to coast, east to west, north, and then south to north. So we're going to start off that way. So we have, in the very far west, British Columbia. Capital begins with a V of Vancouver, although Vancouver is right next to it. Capital is Victoria. On Vancouver Island, though. So we're giving you that credit. Not points, but credit. After that, we have Alberta, and thank you so much. Shitting on Edmonton. Although apparently that's only a Calgary thing to do. I don't give a shit. And we have Saskatchewan, the capital, Regina. That's why it rhymes with.
Oh, yeah.
The capital of Manitoba is Winnipeg, or as some Canadians like to call it, Winnipeg, Manitoba. I don't know why, but we do. Then we have Ontario, where Toronto is the provincial capital and Ottawa federal. Quebec with Quebec City. And the Maritime provinces, I actually had to look at a map to figure out which one was most east, most west in terms of start point and end point. So we're going to start off with Newfoundland and Labrador. I actually can't remember that one. Then we have New Brunswick, which has the capital of Fredericton.
Never
Prince
would have
Edward-
guessed that one.
Yeah, go figure, right? Then we have Prince Edward Island, which you're right, it is very well known for Anne of Green Gables. Capital being Charlottetown.
Oh, that's right. That's what it is. All right.
I know.
Damn
And
it.
then we have Nova Scotia, and I think it's hilarious that you called it Hall, and then you said Halifax, because Halifax is correct. And then we go to the north, and from, again, west to east, we have the Yukon Territories. Don't ask me the capital of these three things, because they changed in my lifetime. We have the Yukon Territory. We have the Northwest Territory, which actually was broken off, I want to say late 90s, early 2000s, into two territories. So it went from 1 to 2. And then the second territory is Nunavut. And the capital of that one, I actually know because it's very out there and very, I want to say it's a Inuit word, but I'm probably wrong. It's Iqaluit is the capital of that. So I think Tanner won that one. But boys, you made a very solid effort.
Woo, woo.
He's
That
been in
hockey.
Wisconsin. Yeah, hockey, man. I should have thought about that. Oh, well.
Canada
Awesome.
hockey, man. It's kind of like our lifeblood. We only won how many freaking gold medals before the NHL decided that we couldn't use our own hockey players anymore. Yeah, that's why Germany did so well. Germany doesn't really have anybody in the NHL, but on the international stage. So we're going to go back to the story now. At the time of Confederation, much of Canada still belonged to the UK, except for the 4 provinces mentioned. So fun fact, before 1867, there was a border with Yukon Territory and Russia. You may know that border as Canada and Alaska now. It was Russian America for the time. So British Columbia in the west has stayed virtually the same, according to the old-timey map I found on Wikipedia anyways. Then it was, way back then, it was called the Northwestern Territory. Now it's the Northwestern Territory, but its borders covered the Yukon Territory, the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, much of Alberta, and bits of Saskatchewan. There was also Rupert's Land, as it was called back in the day. Back in the day of having 12 children, because 2 or 3 might survive into childhood, which meant you could retire, aka die, and know that your family name on. And that covered the rest of Nunavut, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. Back in those days, Ontario and Quebec actually didn't look to have much more than a quarter of the land that they do now. The rest of it was all Rupert's Land. Then, of fucking course, we had Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island. Those still actually belong to the UK, while Labrador, I actually am confused as to what was going on with that, because it looked like it was a tenancy of Newfoundland, but Newfoundland belonged to the UK, and confusing. Okay, so why did the UK decide to let Canada have its own little slice of this land that we surrounded for a few more years? Well, I'm glad that you didn't ask, except in this hypothetical situation that I made up. There were a number of internal and external factors contributing to the Confederation of Canada and Canada getting to be its own thing. For example, there was political deadlock caused by the way politics was structured back then. And I think there's a joke about how little politics has changed in the last century and a half, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I didn't write one. Next, we have population growth. There was a lot of population growing in the colonies because they realized, hey, we haven't raped and pillaged this land except for the people who already live here. They've, lived on the land, taking care of it and all that, but we're going to do our own fucking thing. There There was economic nationalism as well as development, and an intercolony railroad, which would have improved trade, military movement, and transportation in general, because we all know that that's how railroads worked back in the day. Other factors included a free trade policy, which allowed products to go into the U.S. without taxes or tariffs. That got canceled. There was the U.S. doctrine of manifest destiny. And, of course, let's not forget that there was that whole Civil War thing going on. But the last thing that I wrote on my list, and it's only because I love the fucking name of it, and that is a phrase called Little Englander. Yes, it's hilarious, and I cannot wait to use it if ever I have friends who are from English or from England.
From English, they're from a language.
I mean, to be fair, it's a bastardized fucking language. This phrase was actually applied by British libtards of the day who opposed the expansion of the British Empire, and they wanted England to no longer hold troops in the colonies. They wanted to bring them back home. So what else can I say about the Confederation? All right. Well, a bunch of meetings took place. There were conferences, and let me tell you, they were historical and old-timey. And a whole lot of too long didn't read for a guy who threw together too much of this at the last fucking minute and wanted to cover more ground and make more jokes about stuff he actually remembers from his time in school. So we're going to move on to Sir John A. Mcdonald for a little bit here. He was a dominant figure of the Canadian Federation and he had a political career spanning about half a century. He was born in Scotland, so he was a Scot, and his family immigrated to Kingston, Ontario. But at the time, it was in the province of Upper Canada, which is where they kept things white and delightsome. In 1857, he was a premier, which meant leader, of the colony's unstable political system. So, in 1864, when no political party could hold power for long, I couldn't find a definitive time for a funny moment on that one, so that's all I said about that. He agreed to a proposal from a political rival, because compromising with your political rival back then was not the same thing as making a fucking deal with a Nazi. They agreed that the parties would unite, and he led the Great Coalition to seek federation as well as political reform. He was the leading figure in the lead up to the birth of Canada in 1867. He was actually our first prime minister and served that office for 19 years. There was only actually one other prime minister who served for longer. I just can't remember the fucking name because it didn't seem important enough to write down. He resigned in office in 1873 over a scandal so noticeable that it has its own Wikipedia entry. This was called the Pacific Scandal. This scandal, let me tell you, it really looks like something I want to read about, and so I can tell you more about it. I mean, I can tell you that it involves his party taking bribes from businessmen who sought the contract to build the Canadian Pacific Railway. He was later reelected in 1878 and then held office in 1891, because I'm sure you realize that 1867 to 1871 is only 4 years, and I said he was in power for 19 years. But in 1891, he actually passed away, and he passed away about 3 or 4 months after he had won the election in March of that year. The official cause of death being that he had a stroke, and they didn't really have great medicine back then. So, like all politicians, Sir John A. Mcdonald was not without controversy. There were 3 major ones attributed to him on his Wikipedia page. So three of the biggest ones that I could find, anyways, they were the previously mentioned in Pacific Railway scandal. He had a role in the Chinese head tax, and his apparently most controversial move was when he approved the execution of Métis leader Louis Riel for treason in 1885. That last one actually alienated a lot of francophones in his party, which was at the Conservative Party. Despite all of these, he is still one of the highest rated prime ministers in the Canadian history and is very respected in his role of the formation of Canada. So the 2 controversies that I did mention there, I'm just going to do a brief blurb on them. So we had the Chinese head tax. This was a very, 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 well, I guess I shouldn't downplay it. This was a small proof that Canadians we can be really racist too when we want. So this stemmed from the fact that over 15,000 workers were brought over from China to do construction on the railway. But all of these workers were paid at best half of what their white coworkers made. Now, the Chinese head tax itself was an anti-immigration tax aimed to charge any Chinese person entering Canada a $15 fee in 1855, which I'm only guessing is about $5,000 in today's money, in Canadian money, which is probably like, I don't know, $3 American. I don't know. I'm not good with conversion.
There's no conversion.
One of us. That tax actually increased to $500 in 1903. Again, I don't know the conversion. But if you came over and you were Chinese and a student, a teacher, a missionary, a merchant, or a member of the diplomatic corps, you were actually exempt from the fee because your occupation was seen as transitory, and it was assumed that you would return to China and not be taking jobs from, local Canadians because capitalism, that's how it works. Now, it occurred to me as I write this, or as I was writing this, that Louis Riel was somebody that I need to actually actually somebody that I need to dedicate another segment to this too, because of obvious reasons. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the term Métis, this was a designation for children of the among the first French and British fur traders who had married First Nations and Inuit women, mainly from the tribes Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux. I think I may have pronounced that wrong. I don't know.
You sound like me now.
Yeah, sure. There's an X at the end. I don't know what that means, or I don't speak French because they were in the areas most commonly frequented.
Does it sound? That sounds a little racist to me. Are you anti-French, Keith?
It's not that I'm anti-French. It's just that I'm Albertan and I have a deep anti-Francophone sentiment ingrained into me. I'm working on it. I'm sorry. I'm not perfect. So I realized, and once I got to this, I kind of realized how much I had written down. And I realized that there was a schwack load at the table. So I had learned a lot more than I'd planned to, and I deviated from my original plan. So when I had to talk to my wife about helping me plan the next few segments, she's going to laugh her ass off at me because she's a teacher and I'm not, and I totally bastardized the entire profession in what I did. So I'm going to cut it off there because there's a whole lot more to unpack with all of that. There were a couple of entire ranges of topics to go into. And since Tanner seems open to the idea of making this a long-term segment, I am okay going back to my drawing board and opening the floor to questions. I mean, listeners, Tanner will tell you where to send your questions. And boys, Tanner, do you guys have any questions? Preferably ones that I could easily Google.
Oh my God.
Well, then no, if you got to Google it.
Good Lord. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think the biggest point here is the fact that Canada has history that a lot of people don't know about. That's correct, right?
Especially us.
That's very correct, actually. One of the atheist Facebook group that I'm a part of was talking about an article. Sorry, I'm trying to stall while I find the article. Essentially, the article was about a Saskatchewan First Nations child who, in the school system, she took a test and she completely wrote part of the answers because they were whitewashing history. And what I had to come to terms with was the fact that growing up, I actually didn't learn. Oh, excuse me. Apparently this liquor is making me gassy. I didn't learn a whole lot about what happened to the indigenous people. I didn't exactly learn the truth about what happened when the Europeans started to come, other than the Vikings who were actually here about 500 years before the French and English showed up, which is fun to look into, unless you're one of those weird conspiracy people who thinks the ancient Roman Empire came to fucking North America. But in that case, I invite you to put on a tinfoil hat and just sit there and with your lips, because you don't have anything interesting to bring to the conversation at this time. I had to come to terms with the fact that I didn't know anything about it essentially was called, it can be compared to a cultural genocide at the residential school system. I believe you guys actually had to deal with it in the States. In Canada, we've really wash over it. I think it was junior high. We mentioned it casually and then moved on. We never really talked about how it impacted First Nation people, and the long-term cultural ramifications of basically taking children out of their homes and telling them that they were inherently evil, they were inherently flawed, and that they were nothing more than primitive proto-humans because they were born of people who, weren't part of European civilization. I never really learned about that until I went to university in English, of all fucking classes, when one of our readings was about I need to find this reading again. I've got the book somewhere in my storage unit. Essentially, it's called 5 Generations, and it's just a slice of how each generation has been affected, and why indigenous populations have the stereotypes they have, and how they got there based off of what happened in the residential school system.
I think that's a good place. I think we should come back to that next week. I think that.
Oh, that's not next week. I'm for that subject. I actually have a contact that I'm going to get in touch with, an old client of mine who I talk to every once in a while. I'm going to see about talking to him, getting an interview done, or just to really go into how that impacted, because I think as a white guy, it's easy for me to downplay and wash over, and I would rather that story have its framework built, at the very least, that framework built by someone who's going to do it proper justice. So yes, that is going to come. That is going to happen. I just set date on it because this is on somebody other than myself's schedule.
All right, fair enough.
But next week, rest assured, next time we do this, we're going to talk about something historical.
There we go. As we close the show out, we like to talk about our quick saves for the week. So, Boyce, go ahead. What is your quick save for the week?
Okay, so let me pull that up. There we go. Okay, so the Northern Indiana atheist community is bringing I guess you'd say a lawsuit. They're filing charges through the Freedom from Religion Foundation because one of their history teachers, where'd that go? He has just a relentless amount of religious and anti-democratic political visualizations all over the room. And it says stuff like Democrats are evil and pathetic. And it's a bunch of quotes on a wall. So there's a school down there in Elkhart, Indiana. They're bringing up, I guess they're going to sue them with the backing of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And these guys are notorious for calling the shit out like they see it. They've made a couple other court cases like this.
Yeah. And we actually had one of the lawyers on the show, I don't know, it was like 2 years ago, I think, from Freedom from Religion Foundation. And the difference here is that when they look at these different things, they're willing to take on even the smallest infraction instead of America, just to get kind of the point across. And it was kind of funny. Everybody hated they always hated American atheists, but the Freedom from Religion Foundation, in fairness, has done a lot more for the secular America than you can even imagine. And they actually they were here in Michigan supporting taking down the cross in Grand Haven. There was a couple of other areas that they helped champion as well. So if you don't support the Freedom for Religion Foundation, you should. because I certainly do. I think Hannah does as well. And they're a great organization to donate money to if you have extra money.
Well, and as of last year, there's a city in northern Michigan by the very tip of the Lower Peninsula, Upper Peninsula. It's called Bay City, I believe it was. They had a thing in their actual documentation that says you can't buy property there unless you're a Christian, and you have to be confirmed by a Christian priest and whatnot. And they finally got all that bullshit cleared up. It was like called Bay City, I believe it was. But I was like, holy shit, that took, 2018. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it takes forever, man. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Keith, do you have a quick save for the week?
My quick save is just a personal rant that comes from my job. If everybody out there could just remember that customer service representatives, they're doing a fucking job, okay? And telling them your grievances, I'm going to guarantee you they probably agree with you, but because they're getting paid by that company, they have some standards that they have to stand up for, and they're not always allowed to kind of challenge the system the way you would like to. Without going into too much detail about my current job, I deal with a lot of these customer service complaints where people basically say, well, I'm going to report you to the Better Business Bureau and be prepared for allegations or legal action, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to be fair, if you're going to send in a customer service email demanding that we make you a priority, odds are we're going to go out of our way to make your life as difficult as possible. It's called malicious compliance. There's an entire subreddit dedicated to it, and I recommend you check that out. And if you go through this particular subreddit and you happen to be on the side of the people who the posters are talking about, you should probably spend at least a year working in the service industry because you are the fucking problem. Okay? And you need to learn some goddamn empathy, or I'm going to unironically and I'm unapologetically refer to you as a sociopath.
All right. Hey, fair enough.
That's just a personal rant.
There
and I
you
think
go.
it's better than the last one I attempted.
That's true. That's definitely true. For my quick save of the week, there is a Discovery Magazine article where they talk about a tiny robot snake that's made to slither through your brain. And if anybody knows me as an individual, the big thing here, I hate snakes with a passion. I hate snakes. But the idea here, right, is the fact that this device will crawl through the narrow, twisted veins inside of your brain, and they are hoping that research will demonstrate that it can help with aneurysms without getting stuck, right? So a lot of people, I guess that's false to say, a lot of people get brain aneurysms, but there is people that get brain aneurysms. And the idea behind this is that this specific robot will help use hydraulics and different magnetic materials to help decrease some of the brain aneurysms that people get, right? And so, while as much as I hate snakes, which I do, this is supposed to help people so that they can decrease the amount of strokes that we would normally have.
Ugh.
But I don't know. Do you want a snake crawling through your brain, or do you want a brain aneurysm? Pick.
I mean, I am all for nanotech. I think that's awesome. The only thing that I know about dealing with strokes currently is if you suspect you're having a stroke, pour yourself a cold bath because that'll reduce the blood flow. And then just do your best to try to communicate, because I know when a stroke hits, that's one of the things that goes is your ability to communicate. So pour yourself a cold bath and make sure you've got a friend who knows that if you're talking gibberish at them, that means there's something wrong.
Yeah. And it's not the alcohol or the weed or the mushrooms. it's the brain aneurysm. So,
Hey, brain damage.
either way, I thought that was kind of cool. You know, like, I hate snakes, but I'll tell you what, if it could save my life, stick a snake in my head, let it go through my
fuck
brain.
yeah, that's totally cool. I mean, come on, like, nanotech that can actually, like, that we can prove works? Like, fuck yeah, let's do this shit.
Well, I work in a medical field, so I love any advancements we have for medical field or the medicine to help decrease people's suffering first and foremost and save lives. I mean, that's just the whole point of this thing. But on a second thought, this reminds me of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You're on a fucking dragon.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And that's from Rick Moranis, a Canadian actor.
Ayo.
Not only is he a Canadian actor, but he's Bob McKenzie.
He is. That's very true. Oh.
It's Duke.
Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be back next week with a little bit more Canadian beliefs and intelligence and theory and compare it to some of the U.S. politics. We'll also have Boyce on next week, and we'll be talking a lot more politics with a little bit of science introduced here. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Have a great, amazing night. If you have not checked out Boyce's podcast, you can head over to Mindful Skeptics Podcast on Libsyn, and you can actually check them out. Links are all in the description. Plus, you can check out his YouTube tweet of the day. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics Podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.